Hello and very warm welcome to Decision 2019, a special program where Arise News brings you up to the minute coverage of the Nigerian general elections with context and perspective on the most important ballot issues. I am Christian Ogodo. Thanks for joining us. And coming up in the next 60 minutes, top-notch comments and analysis with unrivaled insight, hindsight and foresight into Decision 2019, including as the newly elected members of the National Assembly received their certificates of return, we'll get top-notch analysis of what's expected of them. And later, how are the political parties reacting to the outcome of the governorship elections, most especially in states that were closely contested by the ruling APC? We'll be speaking to a member of the ruling party from Akwa Ibom State to get a sense of what's happening or what happened in that state. The Independent National Electoral Commission is urging newly elected members of the National Assembly to commence and conclude work on the review of the electoral legal framework early, ahead of the 2023 general elections. The Commission is looking forward to work very closely with the senators-elect as well as those in the House of Representatives in deepening the country's electoral process. Well, joining us now in the studios to take a shot at this is Right Honourable Dr. Osai Nicholas Osai, better known as Osai Osai, representing ndokwa Ukwuani Federal Constituency of Delta State. Osai Osai, I love calling you that. That's what your colleagues on the floor of the Green Chamber will always call you.
That's it.
Yeah, very vibrant and articulate in national discussions on the floor. But let's look at the 8th Assembly. It has very few months, left before it will be history. What are those bills germane that should be passed or resent to Mr. President for his assent, just like the Independent National Electoral Commission has singled out one, the electoral amendment bill that Mr. President rejected?
Yeah, I think I quite agree with the chairman and the commission on issues of the electoral bill that was passed and that was not assented to by Mr. President. I believe now Mr. President has got no reason again to reject the assenting of that bill. I believe that bill will cover a lot of mileage in terms of the correctness of our elections. I think that should be the focus of the National Assembly outside the budget.
Yeah, looking at 2023 too, or trying to review, the general elections from presidential to the just concluded governorship and state houses of assembly elections. There were pitfalls, noted by stakeholders and including INEC. What do you think that some of the provisions of what was passed in that bill that Mr. President, refused to assent to, not rejecting the entirety of the bill as it's being bandied or as was bandied in some quarters? What are those germane issues in that bill that must come up to help INEC in solving some of the challenges that were obvious?
When you fail to assent to a bill, you've rejected the totality of the bill. Not really, but he gives reasons on some key areas why he's not assenting to it. And one of the key reasons, he said that the bill is too close to elections, and he cited the ECOWAS protocol. ECOWAS protocol does not work in Nigeria except if we, National Assembly, concord to that in terms of every law or treaty that you reach must also be confirmed by National Assembly for it to become a local law. And that was not done. So definitely that couldn't have been a reason. But all the same, we have seen what has happened in election in terms of transmission of the results, which was not there now. And those are one of the key areas that the new electoral law is going to cover up or cure. And I believe that everything that we need under a free and fair election has been accommodated in that bill. I believe that the National Assembly should be able to rescind it to the executive.
Without any further amendments, without
no, I don't
touches
think
here and
no,
there?
I don't think there will be any other further amendment.
You think it's just an issue of transmitting the results?
No,
how about the issue of voting, people, not being allowed to vote, ballot snatching and the rest?
Those are already accommodated in terms of the electoral frauds,
yeah,
and issues of electoral fences.
Yeah.
That has been accommodated, and with the electoral tribunal, been set up, accommodated in that bill. I think that bill is enough. We did a lot of work by interfacing with every
stakeholders. Did you interface with the military, who keeps insisting or interfering in the electoral process, like we saw, in some parts of the country? River State, is one huge example that is still reverberating across the lands and beyond.
I think that is one of the key areas we also need to look at again.
So that means that bill needs some retouching then.
That is true.
You aren't going to transmit that bill in its raw form back again to Mr. President.
That is true, because it's a new issue now. People, where the military comes into the arena, it's not too good. Judging from what has happened in River State and what has happened in other states of our country too, especially in the Northeast. Also happened, and judging from what we have also witnessed, the military must be defined, how the rules of the military must be played, and who authorized the military to come.
The courts have done that.
The Constitution gives the president the power to deploy military, but under what occasion, under what situation must be defined, also in the Constitution, in the further amendment of the Constitution. That key section of the Constitution must be defined.
But as a legislator and a participant in the just concluded elections, general elections, did you see an abuse or aberration of the Constitution by the role the military played?
To me, I was in my constituency, so I got information from other states. But I also have to authenticate most of this information. But judging from the role the military played in Delta State, I think the military did not actually come into the arena because they were very far from the polling unit. They're stationed strategically. But that's
what usually is expected of them. They're supposed to be the last layer of security,
Yeah, so hearing from other states, you also need to authenticate most of those key areas. But if judging from what we are seeing from the social media, from what has been posted in different angles, that the military, push themselves into the arena, I think it's not too good for our democracy. It's not too good for our country image. It's also not too good for a commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Nigeria. It's not too good for Mr. President, who is an elder statesman in this country. That's supposed to be the father of the nations. And all the other states are his children. To that extent, for a nation builder, if you're a president and you want to build a nation, you must be able to carry virtually all the sector along, irrespective of the political affiliation. That's what I feel as a president. And that was not what happened. And I believe in going forward, the president of our country, with his age and with his background, having been the former president of Nigeria and through under military, and also the president under the current regime, I believe he should be the father of everybody.
Yeah, but being the father of everybody he's been, and some political analysts and the ruling party would argue that the 8th Assembly has been rebellious to a lot of the issues or bills Mr. President brought forward, some economic programs, to accelerate development and take people out of poverty, that this 8th Assembly, which you belong to and you're in the opposition, has been very rebellious of the president. First was from the word go, where, for example, the leadership of the House, the speakership, is in the hand of the opposition. The same thing in the Senate. So what do you have to say about that? You're sounding reconciliatory now. Is it because the PDP has, minority in the House of Representatives and the Senate?
When you talk in terms of being rebellious, I don't agree with you. We have different arms of government, and definitely no arms control each other. There must be actually conflicts. And that's the essence of checks and balances, the doctrine of checks and balances. They really know that there must be conflict in presidential system of government under democracy. Because it is not a language of the executive that the legislators are also thinking about. So both of them must come in harmony, legislative, executive harmony. And who encourages that harmony? It's the executive that needs to encourage that harmony for it to thrive very well.
So,
you know, I believe Mr. President never did. I expected that as a president of the country, you were inaugurated and the house has been inaugurated. All you need to do, you go for a retreat. I said,
but I thought,
I'm coming,
okay.
sir. You see, the president drive the process. You know, you want help from the legislative arm. All you need to do, go for a retreat with the legislature. Say, okay, this is my blueprint. This is my roadmap. Let's discuss it. If there are other gray areas that needs to be removed, and you add, and you come out with the same template, because who are we working for? We're working for Nigerians. That is the masses.
I was going to come to that because this 8th assembly, did you ever presented a roadmap, you know, to Mr. President, that is to the executive arm of government, to say, look, this is how we can synergize. I know in other assemblies, when I covered the National Assembly then, they had, you know, roadmaps like that were presented from the Obasanjo, you know, regime to even the later Adwa and Jonathan's regime and the rest. And that's why you found some level of harmony, some level of socioeconomic development. Yes, there will be conflict here and there. But did this 8th assembly bring out any blueprints, you know, in
when
support
when the executive have seen you as their son and they have to breathe through you, it's difficult for you to be able to, because we also extended our olive branch in terms of reaching out to the executive that there's need for us to discuss. And don't forget that the present leadership of the House encourage that relationship. That's why you see in the budget process, there's that interface. You know,
the budget process at the beginning of the 8th assembly.
Yes, always that interface.
Was
after the first one.
Was a very scandalous one. You still remember Abdul Jubrin with the budget, what did he call it again? You know, that found his way. Oh, padding. Yeah, that's still, you know, an albatross that the 8th assembly carries. Have you discharged that?
I don't think so. Because the budget was not padded in the first place.
I've interviewed some legislators, your colleagues, who said, yes, there is padding.
I think I was the one who was in charge of that issues in terms of Chairman Ethics and Privileges Committee.
Yeah.
And
it was your committee that suspended him.
It was my
recommendation.
Yeah, it was my committee. But you see, looking at it very well, you need executive and legislative interface and that legislative harmony. I proposed one when I was in the House of Assembly under Governor Ibori's time.
When you were in Delta State House of Assembly, yeah.
And there was harmony, that relationship. Because a civil servant or a bureaucrat wants to recommend a project from my constituency.
The DTHA then was almost 95–99% PDP. So
no, there was a robust completely.
There was virtually no opposition
no, I don't
from
think
there.
So. I don't think so. I don't think so. There were a lot of conflicts, but we were able to resolve it. Now, I recommended that this executive legislative harmony to be, because a situation when a civil servant or a bureaucrat recommends projects that has not interfaced with my people, doesn't know the needs of my people, and you budget issues for my people, and without knowing the scale of preference, what they need at that particular point in time, you go differently. That means there's no participatory democracy. So such situation, it brings conflicts. But when the executive thinks that he knows virtually everything he needs to do to the masses. But the issue is that the Nigerian legislature is a writing legislature. And a writing legislator is not a confirming legislator. A legislator that can rewrite a budget. That's the legislature of Nigeria, as enshrined in the Constitution. So to such extent, you must interface with legislative arm effectively, because they represent the people, they represent their voice, they represent their needs. So those must be taken into consideration. And that is why a retreat in the first place needs to be encouraged. When Mr. President brings, now that probably by May 29, a new face will come. And that new face must come with new ideas. And I believe to be able to carry the entire National Assembly along, there must be a retreat, there must be a roadmap, because one, Nigerian youth are suffering from unemployment. They must create jobs. The legislature that can create jobs must happen immediately, because the country is in dire need of that. And we must build the nation collectively, irrespective of the political divides.
You talked about participatory democracy,
yeah.
and in another breath,
Yeah.
you're now talking about, how to drive the process forward. It can be, said that there's not been participatory democracy between the National Assembly and the executive from your inference, particularly when you look at Budget 2019. It's still there. The excuse is because of the general elections? Late presentation?
Yeah, you see, when you looked at it, you also blame the executive. You know why? I propose amendment of the Constitution that the executive should be able to bring a budget by 1st October to give the legislative arm at least 3 months to look at it. And what is the legislative arm going to do within the period of 3 months? First of all, you must understand the history and the philosophy of a project. I have proposed oversight bills. The oversight bill has about 40 templates upon which the executive will report budget performance and other issues.
Without the legislators going for oversight functions.
Now, I'm coming. You see, this template, executive will produce it back. With this template, you understand the philosophy, the strategy that comes about a particular project. You know the project history. You know virtually everything about the project. So it will not be difficult for you to understand what is at stake in terms of budget performance. So to that extent, you scrutinize the budget, knowing fully well the history of a particular budget and how you are going to use to ameliorate the suffering masses in terms of dividends of democracy and value for money. Now these are issues. The bill has not been signed into law, and it's a constitutional amendment. National Assembly have passed it. The 36 states passed it. And yet the president is withholding assent to such a thing. Is the executive afraid of bringing the budget on October 1st?
But the Constitution is very clear when the president withholds, assent on a bill. And if you find it's really germane for the development of the growth of the country generally, you are allowed within 90 days to third majority.
You have also forgotten that there's a party politics when it comes to overriding the president. The party politics comes into there. But as a father of a nation who wants to build a nation, who have come through a change.
So which means there's no partisanship in the discourse then, because if you all are working for the common goal of the country, should partisanship come to play?
No, the question, everybody might not have my philosophy,
yeah,
the way I think about the country. I think about the country, the masses first. That's what I think about. I have generated a lot of bills that accept this executive. I have proposed about 56 bills. Many of them are passing into laws, signed into laws, just to help the executive. My driving force, how will Nigeria be better? That's my driving force. I didn't just come into the National Assembly to look around. I have come to use legislation to change the situation of our country, to redirect the economy of our country. And that is what I'm after. And that is why I've also come.
Dr. Osai Osai, some Nigerians and political, analysts will say, we have too many bills that even Nigerians can't track. Too many bills that, if they're that effective, why are they not really helping, accelerating, that socioeconomic and political growth?
We don't even have enough bills or laws in our country.
Even,
judging from the Western world.
But when you see the laws that are here, they are not
of course, we implement that law.
Enforced.
Of course, we implement that laws. The laws are implemented by the executive. We implement that law. So you don't blame the legislature that have chalked out how the society must be governed and regulated. So the issue is that probably we have not elected capable hands within the executive arm to be able to drive the process of these legislations. Those are the key issues. The driving force of any economy is the legislation.
Well, that's great. So the 8th National Assembly, like we said, will soon be running out. And two key issues there.
You know, you mentioned the electoral law, which the National Assembly must focus on.
Yeah.
But the medias have not critically examined the issues of the late, presentation of budget, which has undergone a lot of legislative funnels and have been chalked out for executive to sign, and yet the executive is reneging and signing it. And the medias have not driven the process. You should set the agenda. You want a quick passage of the budget. You want the budget financial year to start from January to December. So set the template and ask Mr. President to sign that law. That's the key issues. When you sign that law, you'll be able to carry the private sectors along. But what we are doing in budget cycle in each financial year, May to May, does not fit into the private sector. The private sector's budgeting system is within January to December. So how do we not carry the chunks of people who employ the larger aspect of our people into the economy? How do you carry them along? You carry them along by making sure your budget fits into from January to December. And how do you do that? The law that's supposed to regulate that puts the executive into their tools to be able to chuck this budget to the National Assembly by October 1st has not been driven by the media. And secondly, what is supposed to be do? One budget cycle relates to another budget cycle. Now, what the executive ought to do by June, you set circulars to virtually MDAs, set circular, review the performance of the budget, then begin to aggregate another one again. And between June to August, you've rounded up the next year budget, and you present it to the National Assembly by October 1st. And National Assembly now have to time based on Section 88 and 89 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Well, there's always been that accusation when legislators go for oversight to government agencies and the rest, parastatals. They go demand for bag full of loads of monies and the rest and come back, and they are really not oversighting.
That's not true. Yeah. We have been very, very critical with our report. All you need to do is report must be transparently circulated to Nigeria. Probably in the night assembly, the National Assembly should always carry the press along in scrutinizing the executive because their report can show that. And as you circulate it, you publish your report so that Nigerians can read your report and know when you have done well and when you have not done well. I think that is transparency, parliamentary transparency. That's what we need now. And that's what we'll continue to encourage.
Okay, that's great. Let's just, well, you're not the spokesman of the House of Representatives or the National Assembly generally. If not, I'm tempted to ask you this question. Do you see the 2019 budget really being passed in the lifetime of the 8th Assembly?
Of course, definitely. You see, part of the job has been done.
Because you've not started calling in the parastatals, head of ministries, MDAs,
part of the job. You don't forget that by December, we have also done some oversight in terms of scrutiny. Okay. And at that time, the budget releases has been probably 12%. And now that the releases have reached some sector have reached 50%, and some other some percentage. You also need to review that quickly as possible. Definitely, I'm looking at between now and May, you should be able to pass because the financial year started from May and will end in May. So this budget is supposed to lapse by May. So it's still going on. And so I don't think the budget has been delayed. All I'm after is that the budget cycle should reflect the situation where the private sector must be carried along. That is what I'm after.
Okay, fantastic. I'll put you on hold there so that we'll go on a short break. And when we return, we'll just be taking a peep into the 9th Assembly, which you've started doing. We're going to look at the issues of the medium-term expenditure frameworks and the rest. How has it been really working for Nigeria based on some of your ideas and the bills that you may have passed? You're still watching Decision 2019, plenty more still ahead, including how are political parties reacting to the outcome of the governorship elections, most especially in states that were closely contested by the ruling APC. We'll be speaking to a member of a ruling party from Ukwuani State to get a sense of what's happening or what happened in that state. Stay with us.